For the good part of a decade, YouTube edits have slowly shifted into the dark abyss known as retention editing. There have also been a number of creators who have already covered this topic, I know it, but just wait until you hear what I have learned recently. Mr. Beast, or Jimmy D, has been privately and publicly influencing Gen Zers to follow in his 6'2" gigantic size 12 footsteps. Copycats of all shapes and sizes, in an attempt to emulate Mr. Moist, have reinforced this style of editing to the point that it has reached all corners of the internet and in every language known to man, even some animal languages.
All right, so we got to start packing. So the real question is, what do you want to pack in your bag?
It reached its saturation point, folks. But guess what? After 7 years of insane momentum, in a shocking Twitter announcement, Mr. Beast dropped a bomb. Back to that in a minute. Today, I'm not only going to break down what is happening with long-form content on social media, so you can stay on the cutting edge of content creation. I'm also going to tell you exactly what's coming down the pipeline for editing and how to ensure retention and longevity with your editing style, so you too don't just turn into a Mr. Beast butt-kissing follower like all the other guys. All right, you guys, Mr. Beast in a tweet recently said this. March 30th, 2024, he says, "Let me know if you like the editing style of the new video. It's slower and especially towards the end shows more depth of what we're experiencing than I used to show." There was a book written in the 70s by Walter Murch. It's called In the Blink of an Eye. So it's written by a guy who is used to cinematic storytelling, that style of editing. What Mr. Beast has actually stumbled upon isn't new. It's something that has been around for years. In cinema, they've used it forever. It's the art of storytelling in your content. What Mr. Beast has done over the last 7 years that has made his content so addicting, so incredible to come back to, is this high retention editing style where there is a cut every 2 to 3 seconds. There's always something going on, so your eyes don't have an opportunity to leave the screen and get distracted by something else that's going on with YouTube. But what's happened over the last couple of years, there have been way too many copycats that aren't focusing on storytelling, that are just using these high retention editing tactics to keep people on their content. Again, a lot of people have noticed this, a lot of people have created content on it, but what I'm going to share with you here in just a minute is going to help you ensure that you don't fall into the same trap, or even the trap now that Mr. Beast is kind of creating this new style of content editing that is slower paced or more storytelling. The idea that I want to implant in your brain is that there is a style that works every single time you edit, that is applicable to you, and I'm going to share that with you here in just a few minutes. Once Mr. Beast started this style of editing, you guys, it brought an entire gaggle of creators that attempted to do the exact same thing with a lot of really good success. And the reason that they were doing it is because the success was reinforcing the behavior. But if you look at Colin's Key, especially some of his older stuff before his long break, it was extremely high retention editing, where it was a zoom in, zoom out. You know, you watch the content and you leave with a headache if you're not used to that style. You also have Matthew Beam. Matthew Beam I'm going to talk about here in just a second because he was actually critiqued by Hillier Smith, the famous editor of YouTube. And Eric, he's another one who used heavily retention leaning focused style of editing into his content, and was reinforced by the fact that it was successful. Again, you guys, the behavior is always reinforced when you start getting views, when you start getting comments, when you start getting engagement, you start getting subscribers. But what these guys forget is that their ideas alone are worthy of millions of views. And if they simply just told stories and added elements of tension and suspense and curiosity, they could have people from beginning to end with no problem and get people to come back without leaving with a headache, without leaving just a little bit more on the AD spectrum. So what's happened as a result of this high retention editing format is that it has led to what we call TikTok brain, where these kids now, they have to be entertained every second of the day. And if they go to TikTok or Shorts and the videos don't immediately trigger them to watch, they're not interested in sacrificing 30 seconds for something that is a little bit slower paced. I think Mr. Beast has realized this, and a number of these other creators have realized this. There have also been a ton of creators that have come out over the last couple of years that have blown up with very little editing, very little retention technique. It's mostly about authenticity. Now, again, I know a lot of the things that I've been talking about, you guys have already heard, but it's setting the stage for what is to come. One thing that I want to say before we move on, there's this video right here by Hillier Smith. It's a pro editor reacts to Matthew Beam's worst video. I actually highly recommend watching Hillier Smith in general. The guy knows what he's talking about. He's brilliant when it comes to editing. Literally like all that he thinks about. It seems like, in my opinion, that's literally all that he thinks about. He's just very interested in making sure that stories are told correctly and pacing and editing is good. But one of the things that he says is that this high retention editing, he has a name for it when it doesn't line up with the story. It's called incoherent visual noise.
Fast cuts doesn't mean intensity, it's actually just incoherent visual noise.
I think that's a genius way of putting it. Your videos are just noisy when they're too fast paced. Your videos are too obnoxious. They're too loud, and you might be grabbing attention, but it's not leading to the successful outcome that you want. Okay, so now I want to talk about some of the things that have told some of our most successful clients when it comes to editing, when it comes to retention. Number one of the things that we focus on first and foremost is visual branding. You can have a video with the most cuts, the most jump cuts, the most GIFs, the most memes, everything, but what ends up happening is that strips away the basic brand identity. And the whole goal of your video, especially when you're talking to business owners or you're wanting to create an online brand or persona that's going to withstand the test of time, you have to have a brand that is worth following. You have to have a brand that people can identify with, that people can fall in love with. And if there's too much of this noise, then people won't have an opportunity to get to know you at a deeper level. For example, we're working with a guy who has a house flipping channel. It's a brand new channel. He's been a house flipper for years, very, very successful. One of the things that we asked him in our onboarding is what differentiates you from anybody else who does house flipping on YouTube? And he said, well, I do it in rural areas and I live on a farm and I have animals. And I was like, perfect. That's what you need to introduce into the content in order to get people to connect with you, to create an underlying story, style, brand that people want to follow simply because it's interesting. If you create that brand style before you ever get started, or even while you're getting started, if you focus on that brand style, you're giving people another reason to listen to you and connect with you other than just the editing. That's connecting with people at a different level. So you guys who are watching this, I highly, highly recommend that you focus on your brand identity. Focus on the things that you say that when people hear them, they feel like an insider. They feel like, oh, I've only heard that from Uncle Raph, or I've only heard that from so-and-so. If you start incorporating those brand elements into your content, I promise you, you don't need as much retention editing as Mr. Beast or as some of these other guys who are just trying to content vomit all over your computer. You don't need that if you have the right branding elements. Number two, content personality syncing. So this is another thing that we specifically do for our clients. I don't mean this to sound like a sales pitch. I'm just saying this is specifically what we do, and you guys can do this at home totally fine. Content personality syncing is when you have a content style that fits your personality. It's literally exactly what it is. You sync your personality with the style of editing, with the style of content, and that style becomes you. It's the best fit for your personality. Some people are better at vlogging than they are at podcasts. Some people are better at talking head than they are at vlogs. So if you can find the right style of content, that also will eliminate the need to have a lot of retention edits in your content because you're further connecting with your audience. And number three, top layer removal. What do I mean by that? That sounds a little bit dirty, Uncle Raph. That's not what I mean by it. What I mean by that is when you're peeling an onion, you peel it layer by layer. Now, a lot of people on YouTube have a tendency to either put a wall around their onion, a brick wall, and so nobody ever gets to know them completely. And then a lot of people also have the tendency of destroying that onion just so you can get all the way inside to that core of the little green thing at the middle of the onion, which is like the root of all of your emotion.
Because I know somewhere deep down in my heart,
and that's not good. Building a brick wall or getting to the emotional nubbin in the middle of the onion, those two things are extremes, not good. Peel back a layer, allow people to see some elements of your true real world, just enough that they can identify with you, just enough that they can feel like they know you, so that way they can fall in love with you. Again, not to sound, weird or anything like that, I don't know how about strangers falling in love with me, but it's okay. Because you're building a brand, you're trying to connect. This also allows you to remove the need for retention edits. So before I tell you the secret editing tactic that works for everybody, every single time, I want to tell you what the platforms are doing. If you guys haven't noticed, All of these social media platforms are moving more towards long-form vert content. YouTube allows you now to increase the size of your screen when there's a vertical video that's longer than 1 minute. And speculatively, I think that YouTube is also going to start including that longer form vertical content in the shorts feed at some point. It only makes sense. If they already have a UI that's capable of showing long form in vertical format, it's only natural that they're going to attach those things at some point. And in an attempt to stay on top of their game while TikTok's kind of coming up behind them, TikTok, you guys, is experimenting with 15-minute long form videos on TikTok. And I watched a TikTok the other day where this girl was talking about how she literally just uploaded a long form video in horizontal format on her TikTok feed and it exploded. So I think that TikTok is going to start to make a big push for long form content, even things that are more horizontal. So if you haven't been paying attention to that, I highly recommend you start. Here's my core belief. I do think that YouTube is going to end up staying the king of all content simply because they have everything indexed in a very clean user interface. It's very easy to find content, while TikTok is very difficult to find content that you liked or that you watched even a couple of days ago. You also don't build a relationship with the creators as well as you do with YouTube. YouTube still is the best platform for having a deeper connection with the creator of your choice. Here's the secret to editing that works for every single person, every single time. The style is tension storytelling. It's taking your audience along on a journey. It's telling them a story. And this works exceptionally well with personal brands. It's using storytelling elements to build tension so that way people stay on your content. If you have a story that ends with enlightenment or ends with disappointment or includes drama and ends with drama, or it just involves elements of emotion, and you highlight these emotion in your editing, your content will have a higher likelihood of success. If you simply focus on telling better stories and create a style that is perfectly synced to your personality, every time you upload a video, people will be interested in watching and you will retain that audience. You don't need to have fancy edits. You don't need to copy what the most popular people are doing. All right, you guys, check out this video here, catch you on the next one.